Hey guys, so this is turning out to be a crazy long weekend, but here we are. We'll get back to learning a little bit here, and we're going to go over a little bit more notes. If you don't have your note packet with you at home, that's fine. You can go ahead and go back and watch this um, later to make sure you catch up on these notes. I just wanted to make sure that we're not falling too far behind. So, please make sure that you watch this and get these notes either today or whenever you get your note packet at school. Okay, so I think we should be past this slide. I believe we already did this one, so you guys will have to double check and let me know. So I'm not going to spend any time talking about this one, but let me know if for some reason I didn't go over this already in class. I know we did not do this one. Uh, just going to talk really quickly about how we got the canon that we currently have. By the way, the word canon means like a ruler, so like something that you measure by. It is the official list of books included in the New Testament. Well, actually, the whole Bible. So for Christians, the canon includes all the books of the Old Testament and all the books of the New Testament. These are all books that are considered by Christians to contain divine revelation. Um, there are a lot of different books that are being circulated around the first and second century. Without going into too much detail right now, I'll just say there are other gospels that do exist. You can find copies of them. Nobody's hiding them from you. They're not secretive. They are, for a variety of different reasons, considered problematic. They are considered not official. They were not included in the official canon because they are not believed to be divine revelation. There are different reasons for that. There are all kinds of different problematic things with those different gospels. And you can certainly find copies of them. I have read most of them, at least bits and pieces of them. And once you read them, you sort of see like why they're problematic. But as we started to get these different books that were being circulated, and we get all these different heresies that are developing, leaders within the church said, you know what, we really need to figure out what we're going to include in our list of holy books because people are going to get confused and start believing in these incorrect teachings. So by 397 AD, we have at the Council of Carthage the list of 27 books that we currently have in the New Testament has been finalized. This is the criteria. So this is how they figure out what's going to be included in the canon. There are essentially four criteria that will be used. First, apostolic origin. The books either have to be attributed to or based on the preaching and teaching of the first generation apostles. That is, who are the first followers, the first group of followers of Jesus. That's apostolic origin. They need to have universal acceptance. That is, in other words, they need to have been acknowledged by all the major Christian communities around the Mediterranean as being valid and being divine revelation. They need to have been used in liturgical settings. So that is like when I say liturgical use, like when we do the readings at Mass, there's an Old Testament reading, there's a Psalm, there's a New Testament reading, and then usually there's a Gospel. Though that's being used in a liturgical setting, so being read publicly in worship services and in the masses. And then it has to have a consistent message, and that's really a lot of the issue with some of the gospels that were tossed out, is that they had theological ideas that were problematic for a variety of different reasons. They were considered to be incompatible with other Christian writings, things like the divinity of Jesus, the humanity of Jesus. different things like that. So those are the 4 criteria that were used to determine what was going to be included in the canon. As far as how we group the canon, how the books of the New Testament are ordered, they are not chronological. So a lot of people sometimes will falsely think that the Gospels, for example, are included in the order in which they were in the order in which they were written, and that's not the case. For example, Matthew is first because the author includes the most connections to Judaism and the Old Testament, so it was considered a good transition from the Old Testament to the New Testament. Actually, Mark was written before Matthew, but it's after Matthew in the order of the Gospels. So we have 4 categories or types. That's how the books of the New Testament are ordered. So the Gospels come first, and then that historical text, the Acts of the Apostles. Then we get the letters, mostly from Paul, but a bunch of other authors too. And then even like within the letters, they're not chronological. So the letters are divided. The first group of letters are the letters that were written to communities. And then the second group of letters are letters that were written to individuals. Sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear. My dog is sleeping and he's having dreams and he's barking in the background. Anyway, we get these letters that are written to communities of people, and then we get these letters that are written to individuals. And even within those categories, their order is from longest to shortest. So, which is kind of counterintuitive, because for most Americans, we tend to like things in chronological order, but in the Bible, the letters are by longest to shortest. And then we have that one little strange book that we're going to talk about at the end called the Book of Revelations. That is apocalyptic literature. Okay, so when we come back, hopefully on Wednesday, when I see you guys again finally, we're going to start to talk about something called hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is a very big, very fancy word. All it means is the methods and the scholarly approach that we have to interpreting scripture. So hermeneutics is a scholarly academic way of interpreting scripture. It means how do we approach the study of scripture in a more academic, more scientific way. There are methods of studying scripture that are more personal, and those are great. There's nothing wrong with them. Actually, they're really beneficial. One of the more popular ones is something called Lectio Divina, which you guys may have done in your intro to Catholicism class last year. That's a really beautiful form of scripture study where you read the same passage of scripture several times and sort of allow yourself to meditate on it and think about what jumps out at you from the scriptures. But that's not a academic, scholarly approach to the study of scripture. That's a personal form of prayer. So when we're talking about hermeneutics, we're talking about scholarly approach to scripture. If you remember last semester, we talked about this idea of text and world, and we're going to talk about that very briefly again. I know you guys already hopefully have this, so if you don't, please pause and make sure that if this is something you didn't go over in your Old Testament class, if you had a different teacher, please make sure you understand this so we can talk about it if you need to one-on-one. So the text and world is that Ricoeur method we talked about with the Old Testament. We talked about the world behind the text, the world of the text, and the world in front of the text. The world behind the text, just to remind you, is that historical context. What was all the stuff that was happening when the text was written? The world of the text is what does it actually say and how does it say it? You have to focus on the words, the imagery, and the structures of the text. One of the things we're going to do on the block day, and this is going to be the next thing we're going to talk about, is the way that the text of the Bible was written. So the world of the text for the New Testament, it was written in Koine Greek. Koine Greek is a form of ancient Greek. If any of you speak modern Greek, which I know I do have a few students who speak modern Greek, Koine Greek is kind of like the version of English, like when you read Shakespeare and you have to do a lot of hard work because it's an older form of the language, right? Koine Greek is an older form of Greek that's no longer spoken. It was spoken by the everyday people at that time. It was a common language of the everyday people in the ancient world. The problem with Koine Greek is that the written version of Koine Greek has no spaces between words, no capital letters, no upper or lowercase letters. It had no punctuation and no hyphens. So because they needed to save paper, they would start a word on one line and take that word to the next line. But like in English, when we do that, we put a hyphen so we know the word is continued on the next line. In the Koine Greek, they just would go to the next line. The problem with that is it's very hard to translate into English because you don't always know how to punctuate. So for example, this is like kind of a jokey one, but what's the only difference between these two sentences? It's just a comma. But saying let's eat grandpa versus let's eat grandpa, right? What are these two things? If you have the comma here, you're speaking to grandpa and you're saying let's eat, like it's time for dinner, let's eat grandpa. That comma says you're speaking to grandpa. In this case, if you don't have that comma here, it's like you're speaking about grandpa to somebody else and saying let's eat grandpa, like let's eat grandpa, as in cannibalism. That comma totally changes the meaning of the sentence. Now, I don't think it's quite as dramatic as that with the Koine Greek, but when you look at something like this, for example, how do you translate this phrase? In your own mind, what do you read when you see this? Well, you might see God is nowhere, but you might see God is now here. Those are two very different phrases with two very different meanings. And that, unfortunately, is the challenge of translating Koine Greek into another language like English. Where are the spaces between the words? And then, how do you punctuate it? What if it is God is nowhere? What if, is it God is nowhere? Question mark, right? Like that's a very different meaning. So when we come back together tomorrow, we're going to spend some more time talking about why this was problematic translating the Koine Greek. We're going to leave it there for today. We'll come back tomorrow and wrap it up. I won't spend any time talking about the world in front of the text because we talked about this last semester. But again, if your Old Testament teacher didn't go over this with you, you can jot this down as well. You guys, I hope you have a good day, and please make sure you get these notes either today or tomorrow, and then finish up that short little homework assignment I have for you.